The small apartment smelled of leftover takeout and cheap lavender air freshener. May stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over the skyline. Her fingers tapped an invisible melody against the windowsill, a habit she couldn't shake even after 3 years away from the piano. "Mom, did you take your medicine?" she called out, glancing at the clock. She had exactly 47 minutes before her evening shift started at the Grand Plaza. "Yes, dear. Stop worrying so much," her mother replied from the bedroom. Her voice was stronger today, a good sign. May smiled and went to peek in on her. Mrs. Lynn sat propped up against pillows, a book open on her lap, her reading glasses perched on her nose. The gray in her hair had spread since the cancer treatment, but the spark in her eyes remained undimmed. "I made some rice porridge. It's in the fridge. Just heat it up when you're hungry." Her mother waved her hand dismissively. "I'm not a child. Go get ready for work." May changed into her uniform, black slacks, white button-up shirt, and a burgundy vest with the restaurant's gold emblem. As she tied her long black hair into a neat bun, her gaze caught on the small framed certificate tucked in the corner of her dresser mirror. Juilliard School of Music, the paper that represented both her greatest achievement and deepest regret. The bus was crowded as usual. May stood holding the overhead rail, mentally reviewing the wine list for the evening. The Grand Plaza catered to the city's elite, business executives, celebrities, old money families. The tips were good, which was why she endured the occasional condescending comment or wandering eye from customers who saw the staff as part of the furniture. "Hey, Lynn, you're cutting it close," called Ricky, the bartender, as she hurried through the employee entrance. "Bus was late," she replied, stashing her bag in her locker. The kitchen was already buzzing with activity, the chef barking orders in 3 languages. "Table assignments are up." "You've got sections 3 and 4 tonight," said Heather, the head waitress, not looking up from her clipboard. "Big corporate party coming in at 8. Some tech company. The boss says they better be treated like royalty." May nodded, checking her appearance one last time in the bathroom mirror. Her face revealed none of the exhaustion from working double shifts all week or the worry about next month's rent. Instead, she wore what her coworkers called her museum smile, pleasant, professional, and completely unreadable. The dining room of the Grand Plaza was designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting warm light over marble floors and tables draped in pristine white cloths. In the corner stood a magnificent grand piano, rarely played except on special occasions when the restaurant hired a musician. May's eyes always lingered on that piano. Sometimes on slow afternoons while setting up, she would stand near it close enough to feel its presence but never daring to touch it. The manager had caught her once and joked that she looked like she was admiring a lover. If only he knew. The first few hours of her shift passed in the familiar rhythm of service. May moved between tables with practiced grace, recommending wines, describing specials, anticipating needs before they were voiced. Her regulars appreciated her quiet efficiency and genuine smile. "Lynn, they're here," Heather whispered urgently as she passed by with a tray of empty glasses. "The tech people. Mr. Zhao himself is with them." May glanced toward the entrance where the maître d' was greeting a group of about 15 people in expensive suits. At their center stood a tall man with sharp features, his custom suit and confident stance marking him as someone used to being the most important person in any room. Vincent Zhao, founder of Horizon Tech and one of the richest men in the country. May had seen his face in magazines and news reports. Known for being brilliant and ruthless in equal measure, he had transformed a small startup into a global empire in less than a decade. "They're in your section. Don't mess this up," Heather added unnecessarily. May took a deep breath and approached the large round table where the group was being seated. She maintained her professional demeanor as she distributed menus and recited the evening's specials. "And our sommelier has selected several wine options that would complement tonight's menu perfectly. Would you like recommendations?" she asked, addressing the table generally but aware of Zhao watching her with casual disinterest. One of the executives spoke up, asking about the reserve list, and May answered knowledgeably. Years of memorizing wine characteristics had made this part of her job second nature. As she took drink orders, she noticed Zhao was the only one not participating in the conversation, instead scrolling through his phone with a bored expression. The evening progressed smoothly until it didn't. May was carrying a tray of water glasses when someone pushed their chair back suddenly. She swerved to avoid collision, but 2 glasses tipped, sending water splashing onto the table edge and, unfortunately, onto the sleeve of Vincent Zhao's suit jacket. The table fell silent. "I'm so sorry." "Sir," May said immediately, already using her cloth napkin to blot the water. "It's just water, it won't stain. Let me get you. Is this the level of service we can expect tonight?" Zhao's voice was calm but cutting. He looked at her for the first time, his expression one of mild annoyance, as if she were a calculation that had returned an unexpected result. "No, sir. I apologize for the mistake. I'll be more careful," May replied, maintaining her composure despite the heat rising to her cheeks. She turned to go get more napkins, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." May turned back. The entire table was watching now, some with embarrassment, others with a hint of anticipation, as if used to their boss creating uncomfortable moments. Zhao was studying her hands, which were still holding the serving tray. "Your hands. They're not a waitress's hands." May felt a chill run through her. "What did he mean by that, sir?" "Too graceful, too deliberate in their movements," he continued, as if solving a puzzle. His eyes moved to the grand piano in the corner, then back to her. Something like amusement flickered across his face. "Do you play?" he asked, nodding toward the piano. The question caught her off guard. For a moment, the practiced professional mask slipped, and real emotion flashed in her eyes. Longing, pain, and something else. Something like hunger. She recovered quickly. "I used to, sir." "Used to?" He raised an eyebrow. "One doesn't simply stop being a musician. Not a real one." The word struck too close to home. Around them, the other diners had begun to notice the exchange, the energy in the room shifting. "Well then," Zhao said, setting his phone down and leaning back in his chair. A small challenging smile played at his lips. "Perhaps you'd care to demonstrate." May felt her heart race. "Sir, I'm working." "I couldn't possibly—" "I'm sure your manager would understand and—" "Impromptu entertainment," Zhao interrupted, his tone making it clear this wasn't really a request. "Consider it making up for the spilled water." She glanced toward the manager's station where Mr. Reynolds was watching with obvious concern. He gave a small helpless shrug. "No one said no to Vincent Zhao." "Or," Zhao continued, his voice dropping so only those at the table could hear, "if you're not actually as good as those hands suggest, just say so. No shame in being just a waitress." Something shifted in May's expression then. The careful mask she wore daily cracked further, revealing a flash of defiance. 3 years of swallowed pride, of setting aside her passion while watching her mother fight for her life, of working jobs beneath her training just to pay medical bills. It all rose to the surface. Without a word, she set down her tray and walked toward the piano. The restaurant had gone oddly quiet. Even the kitchen staff had paused to watch through the service doors. May could feel dozens of eyes on her back as she approached the gleaming black grand piano that had taunted her for months. She sat down slowly, adjusting the bench with the automatic movements of someone who had done this thousands of times. Her fingers hovered above the keys for just a moment, a pianist's hesitation, like a diver at the edge of a cliff. In that suspended moment, May thought of her mother's hospital room, of the scholarship letter she'd had to decline, of the practice rooms at Juilliard where she'd once spent 14 hours straight perfecting a passage. She thought of all the music that had been building inside her with nowhere to go, and then, without further hesitation, her fingers touched the keys. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 filled the room. Gentle, questioning, like the beginning of a story told in whispers. Her touch was delicate but confident, each note perfectly weighted. Within seconds, it was clear to everyone in the restaurant that this was no amateur performance. As the piece progressed, growing more complex and emotional, May closed her eyes. The restaurant disappeared. The watching crowd, Zhao's challenge, her uniform, her worries, all of it fell away. There was only the music speaking through her hands in a language she had been forbidden to use for too long. The other diners sat transfixed. Servers paused mid-step, trays in hand. In the kitchen, the chef stopped shouting orders. And at table number 4, Vincent Zhao's expression transformed from smug amusement to genuine surprise, then something harder to define. The music swelled through the restaurant, each note perfectly placed, each phrase shaped with the kind of artistry that can't be taught. May's fingers danced across the keys with both power and delicacy, drawing out the soul of Chopin's music in a way that made it feel both timeless and startlingly new. As the final notes of the ballad faded, there was a moment of complete silence, That precious second after great art when the audience needs time to return to reality. Then the room erupted. Applause thundered from every corner. Diners who moments before had been enjoying quiet conversations over expensive meals were on their feet. The kitchen staff crowded the doorway, the chef still holding a sauté pan. Someone let out a whistle of appreciation that would normally be considered inappropriate in such an upscale establishment. But tonight no one seemed to mind. May opened her eyes, blinking as if waking from a dream. For 3 years she had locked away this part of herself, and the rush of finally setting it free left her feeling almost dizzy. She stood from the bench on slightly unsteady legs and gave a small reflexive bow, the habit of a trained performer. At table 4, Vincent Zhao hadn't moved or applauded. He sat perfectly still, staring at May with an intensity that was unsettling. His dinner companions exchanged glances, uncertain how to react. Mr. Reynolds, the restaurant manager, hurried over to May. "That was unexpected," he said under his breath, his expression a mix of amazement and concern. "Perhaps you should get back to—" "No," came Zhao's voice, cutting through the commotion. He had stood up now and was approaching the piano. "She's not going back to serving wine." The room quieted as people realized something significant was happening. May straightened her shoulders, unsure whether to feel defensive or proud. The vulnerable moment of music had passed, and now she felt exposed in a different way. "Where did you study?" Zhao asked without preamble. "Juilliard," May answered, seeing no reason to lie. 3 years. "I didn't finish." Zhao nodded as if confirming a theory. "And now you're here, pouring water for businessmen who wouldn't know Chopin from Beethoven." "It wasn't quite a question. We all have our reasons for the paths we take," May said carefully, conscious of the audience they had. She didn't owe this man her life story, no matter how rich or powerful he might be. Something like respect flickered in his eyes at her measured response. "Indeed we do." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. "What's your name?" "Lin, Mei Lin." Zhao extracted a business card and a pen. He wrote something on the back of the card, then held it out to her. "Mei Lin, you've just been severely underpaid for that performance." May hesitated before taking the card. When she glanced at what he'd written, her eyes widened. "A figure?" $25,000, followed by his signature. "Consider it a down payment," Zhao said before she could speak. "I'm hosting a private event at my home next weekend. I want you to play. It wasn't a request." In Vincent Zhao's world, May was beginning to understand. Things simply happened because he decided they should. "Mr. Zhao, she'll need to check her schedule," interjected Mr. Reynolds smoothly, materializing at May's side. "Ms. Lin is one of our most valuable employees." Zhao gave the manager a look that could have frozen water. "I'm sure you can spare her for one evening," he said, his tone making it clear the matter was settled. "My assistant will be in touch with the details." He turned back to May. "Be prepared to play for 2 hours. Choose whatever you like, but include the Chopin." With that, he returned to his table, leaving May holding the card with its life-changing number. The diners, sensing the drama had concluded, gradually returned to their meals and conversations, though many kept stealing glances at the waitress-turned-pianist. "Lynn, take a break," Mr. Reynolds murmured. 5 minutes. Then Section 3 needs attention." May nodded, grateful for the chance to collect herself. She slipped into the staff bathroom and locked the door, finally allowing her hands to shake as the adrenaline caught up with her. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, at the woman in the server's uniform who had just revealed herself to be something else entirely. The business card in her hand seemed to pulse with possibility. $25,000. More money than she made in a year at the Grand Plaza. Money that could pay off the remaining medical bills. Maybe even allow her mother to try that experimental treatment the insurance wouldn't cover. But she knew it came with strings attached. Men like Vincent Zhao didn't hand out small fortunes without expecting something in return. What exactly did he want from her? Just music? Or was this the beginning of something more complicated? The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Her coworkers looked at her differently now. Some with newfound respect, others with curiosity or even envy. Heather kept her distance, clearly uncomfortable with this new dynamic. Ricky, the bartender, gave her a thumbs up when she passed the bar. "Always knew you were hiding something," he said with a grin. "Just thought it might be a criminal record, not a superpower." May smiled despite herself. "Playing piano isn't a superpower. Tell that to everyone who was in here tonight, Ricky replied, sliding her a glass of water with lemon. You changed something in this place. It feels different now. He was right, she realized. The air in the restaurant had shifted. Customers who had never noticed her before now tracked her movements with interest. A woman at table 7 asked for her autograph on a napkin, to May's embarrassment. By the time she clocked out, May was exhausted, but wired. The night air felt crisp against her face as she waited at the bus stop, Zhao's card tucked safely in her wallet. The last bus was nearly empty, and she claimed a window seat watching the city lights blur past. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How was work? Do you want me to wait up? May stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could she explain everything that had happened? That after 3 years of silence, her music had finally been heard again? That a billionaire had noticed her, challenged her, and now wanted to pay her a small fortune to play at his house? She typed simply, something happened. I'll tell you when I get home. The apartment was quiet when she unlocked the door, but a light still shone from under her mother's bedroom door. May tapped gently. Come in, called Mrs. Lin. Her mother was sitting up in bed, reading glasses perched on her nose, a novel open on her lap. She took one look at May's face and set the book aside. What is it? What's happened? May sat on the edge of the bed and told her everything. The water spill, Zhao's challenge, the performance, the offer. As she spoke, she watched her mother's expression transform from concern to pride to wariness. $25,000. Mrs. Lin repeated when May had finished. Just to play at a party? That's what he said. Her mother frowned slightly. Men with that kind of money don't give it away for nothing. It's not nothing. Mom, it's for my music. You haven't touched a piano in 3 years. The words stung, though May knew her mother hadn't meant them to. That doesn't mean I stopped being a pianist, she said quietly. Echoing Zhao's words from earlier, Mrs. Lin reached for her daughter's hand, examining the slender fingers that had once been calloused from hours of practice. I never wanted you to give up your dreams for me, she said softly. That was your choice, and I'd make it again, May insisted. Your life was more important than my career. But now perhaps you can have both. Her mother squeezed her hand. Be careful, though. Find out what this man really wants before you agree to anything. May nodded, knowing her mother's caution came from wisdom. I will. Later, lying in her bed, May stared at the ceiling, too wired to sleep. She flexed her fingers, feeling the pleasant ache in muscles that hadn't been properly used in years. Tonight had awakened something she'd tried to bury. Not just her skill, but her hunger for music, for performance, for the transcendent feeling that came from connecting with an audience through sound. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. An email from an address she didn't recognize, with the subject line, regarding Mr. Zhao's event. The message was brief and formal, clearly written by an assistant, Ms. Lin. Mr. Zhao has requested your performance at his residence on Saturday, September 28th, from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. A car will pick you up at 6:30 p.m. Please reply with your address and confirm your availability. A deposit of $10,000 will be transferred to your account upon confirmation. Please provide your banking information at your earliest convenience. Regards, Diana Chen, Executive Assistant to Vincent Zhao. May read the email twice, her heart racing. This was real. It was happening. A week ago, she had been nothing but a waitress with a hidden past. Now she was a pianist again, at least for one night. She thought about what her mother had said about being careful about finding out what Zhao really wanted. But as she looked at the Juilliard certificate still tucked in her mirror frame, another question formed in her mind. What did she want? If this was her chance to reclaim a part of herself she thought was lost forever, was she brave enough to take it? And if she did, where might it lead? May closed her eyes and let herself imagine sitting at a grand piano again. Not in a restaurant this time, but in a proper venue, with people who had come specifically to hear her play. The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. She opened her eyes and began to compose her reply. Whatever game Vincent Zhao was playing, she had decided to play along, at least for now. Music had found its way back to her life through an unexpected door, and she wasn't going to close it without seeing what lay on the other side. The week passed in a blur of anticipation and preparation. May had forgotten how much physical work went into readying a performance. Her fingers, soft from years away from regular practice, developed fresh blisters that hardened into new calluses. She spent every spare moment at a small music school 10 blocks from her apartment, where the owner, an old friend of her former teacher, let her use the practice rooms for free. "Just don't tell anyone I'm giving away practice time," Mrs. Wu had said with a wink. "Bad for business. At home?" Her mother watched with a mixture of joy and concern as May threw herself back into music with the intensity that had once defined her life. "Don't push too hard," Mrs. Lin cautioned on Thursday evening. Placing a cup of tea beside the stack of sheet music May was studying at their small kitchen table. "You haven't played seriously in years. Your muscles need time to remember." "I don't have time," May replied, not looking up from the Rachmaninoff piece she was marking. "The event is in 2 days." Her mother sat down across from her. "What exactly did Mr. Zhao say he wanted you to play?" "Whatever I want, as long as I include the Chopin." May finally looked up, rubbing her tired eyes. "I'm putting together a program of pieces I already know. Things I can make performance-ready quickly." Mrs. Lin nodded, studying her daughter's face. "The money came through yesterday," she said quietly. $10,000, just like he promised." They both glanced toward the bedroom where the stack of medical bills had been growing for years. Bills that could now be paid. "I still don't understand why he's doing this," her mother continued. "Men like that always have reasons." May shrugged, though the same question had been bothering her all week. "Maybe he just likes music." "Maybe," Mrs. Lin conceded, clearly unconvinced. "Just be careful on Saturday. Text me when you arrive and when you're leaving." May smiled. "I'm 26, Mom, not 16. Doesn't matter. Rich men are rich men no matter how old you are." Saturday arrived with unexpected speed. The car Zhao had promised, a sleek black town car with tinted windows, pulled up in front of their apartment building precisely at 6:30. The driver, a woman in a crisp uniform, confirmed May's name before opening the back door. "Nervous?" the driver asked as they pulled into traffic. May, who had been staring at the leather folder containing her sheet music, looked up. "A little," she admitted. "It's been a while since I played for an audience. A real audience, I mean." The driver nodded. "Mr. Zhao's guests are mostly pleasant. They'll appreciate good music." "Mostly pleasant?" The driver laughed. "Well, you know how the ultra-wealthy can be. Some think their bank accounts make them music critics." Great, May thought. Just what she needed. Amateur experts judging her rusty skills. As they left the familiar streets of her neighborhood behind, May felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. What if she wasn't ready? What if she embarrassed herself in front of Zhao and his high society friends? What if... She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, silencing the spiral of doubt. She knew these pieces. They lived in her fingers, in her heart. 3 years was a long time, yes, but music wasn't something you simply forgot. The car turned onto a private road that wound up into the hills overlooking the city. After passing through an imposing security gate, they followed a curved driveway lined with perfectly manicured trees until Zhao's house came into view. Except house wasn't the right word. The structure before them was a modern mansion of glass and steel, perched on the hillside like a geometric sculpture. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the golden light of the setting sun, and multiple terraces extended outward, blurring the line between inside and outside. "We're here," the driver announced unnecessarily. A man in a dark suit was waiting at the entrance. He opened May's door and introduced himself as Peter, Mr. Zhao's house manager. "Ms. Lin, welcome. Mr. Zhao has been expecting you. Please follow me." May clutched her music folder to her chest and followed Peter through massive glass doors into an entrance hall that could have housed her entire apartment. The interior was minimalist but clearly expensive. All clean lines, neutral tones, and carefully placed artwork that probably cost more than she would earn in a lifetime. "The guests will be arriving at 8, Peter explained as he led her through the house. "Mr. Zhao thought you might like to see the piano and have some time to prepare." They entered a large open space that seemed to be the heart of the home. One wall was entirely glass, offering a breathtaking view of the city below. In the center of the room stood a magnificent grand piano, a Steinway, May realized with a jolt of excitement, the kind of instrument she had only played a handful of times even during her years at Juilliard. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Mr. Zhao had it tuned yesterday," Peter said. "There's water and refreshments in that side room, and a bathroom if you need it. Mr. Zhao will be down shortly. Please make yourself comfortable." With that, he disappeared, leaving May alone with the piano, She approached it slowly, running her hand lightly over its polished surface. Then, unable to resist any longer, she sat on the bench and placed her fingers on the keys. The touch was perfect, responsive but with just enough resistance. She played a few scales to feel the action, then launched into a brief passage from one of her prepared pieces. The sound that filled the room was rich and warm, the acoustics ideal. "I see you two are getting acquainted." May stopped playing and turned to find Vincent Zhao watching her from the doorway. He wore dark slacks and a simple but obviously expensive button-down shirt, more casual than at the restaurant but no less imposing. "It's an incredible instrument," she said. Standing, Zhao waved for her to remain seated. "Please continue. That's why you're here." He crossed the room to a built-in bar and poured himself a drink. "Would you like something? Water? Wine? Water is fine, thank you." He brought her a glass, then sat in a chair positioned to face both the piano and the view. "Tell me, Ms. Lin, why did you leave Juilliard?" The question caught her off guard. "Personal reasons," she said after a moment. "Your mother's illness," Zhao stated. It wasn't a question. May stiffened. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know who I'm dealing with." He sipped his drink. "Ovarian cancer diagnosed in your final year. You withdrew to care for her and help with medical expenses. Admirable, if perhaps unnecessary." Unnecessary? May felt heat rise to her face. There are foundations, scholarships, support systems, ways you could have finished your degree while managing your family situation. "With all due respect, Mr. Zhao, you don't know anything about my situation." He studied her for a moment, then inclined his head slightly. "Perhaps not. But I know talent when I see it, or hear it, and I know waste. You serving drinks at the Grand Plaza is a waste." Before May could respond, Peter reappeared at the doorway. "Sir, the first guests have arrived." Zhao stood. "We'll continue this conversation later. The program we discussed is still acceptable?" May nodded, swallowing her irritation. "Yes, 2 hours with a short break after the first hour." "Perfect. I'll introduce you after everyone has arrived." As Zhao left to greet his guests, May turned back to the piano, trying to center herself. Who did he think he was, passing judgment on her life choices? He had no idea what those days had been like. The fear of losing her mother, the crushing weight of medical bills, the impossible choices, and yet, a tiny voice in her head whispered, maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe there had been other options she hadn't explored, too overwhelmed by crisis to see alternatives. She pushed the thought away. Tonight wasn't about the past. It was about the music, about proving to herself that this essential part of her identity hadn't been lost. The room gradually filled with guests, about 30 people dressed in the casual yet expensive style of those who never had to worry about making impressions. They mingled with drinks in hand, their conversation creating a gentle hum that grew louder as more arrived. May noticed they were younger than she'd expected, mostly in their 30s and 40s. Not the older crowd she'd imagined would attend a classical piano recital. Many glanced curiously in her direction, clearly wondering who she was. At precisely 8 o'clock, Zhao raised his hand, and the room fell silent with surprising speed. "Friends," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly, "thank you for coming tonight. As promised, I have something special for you. Many of you know my interest in discovering hidden talents, people of exceptional ability who, for whatever reason, have remained unknown." He gestured toward May. "Last week, I encountered one such talent, a pianist of remarkable skill who is currently working as a waitress at the Grand Plaza." Murmurs of interest spread through the crowd. May felt her cheeks warm at being described like some curiosity Zhao had unearthed. "I've invited Ms. Mei Lin to play for us tonight. I trust you'll find her performance as extraordinary as I did." With that introduction, he stepped aside and all eyes turned to May. She took a deep breath, approached the piano, and adjusted the bench. This was it, her first real performance in 3 years. For a moment, doubt threatened to overwhelm her. These weren't restaurant diners caught by surprise. These were guests who had been promised something exceptional. What if she couldn't deliver? But as she placed her hands on the keys and played the opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the piece that had started all this, something shifted. The music took over, flowing through her fingers with a will of its own. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget, the subtle weight shifts, the precise timing, the balance between technical precision and emotional expression. As the piece built toward its climactic final section, May lost awareness of the watching crowd. She forgot Vincent Zhao and his judgments, forgot the years away from music, forgot everything except the conversation between her hands and the piano. When the final chord faded, there was that magical moment of silence she remembered from her concert days. The collective held breath before the applause begins. Then the room erupted with appreciation, genuine and enthusiastic. May looked up, slightly dazed to see the guests standing, their faces alight with the special joy that comes from experiencing unexpected beauty. In that moment, she felt a rush of something she had almost forgotten, the unique satisfaction of connecting with an audience through music, of sharing something true and deep without words. As she moved into her second piece, May felt herself settling into a familiar rhythm. This was where she belonged. Whatever came after tonight, whatever game Vincent Zhao was playing, she knew with sudden clarity that she couldn't walk away from music again. Across the room, Zhao watched her, his expression unreadable. But in his eyes was something that hadn't been there before, not just approval or satisfaction at being proven right, but something that looked almost like respect. The evening progressed like a dream. May moved through her prepared program with growing confidence, each piece flowing more naturally than the last as her fingers rediscovered their old strength and agility. When she paused for a short break after the first hour, the guests surrounded her with genuine appreciation. That Rachmaninoff was incredible, said a woman in a simple black dress that probably cost more than May's monthly rent. Where did you study? Juilliard, May replied, taking a sip from the water glass Peter had refreshed for her. And now you're waiting tables? Asked another guest, a man with silver-streaked hair. That seems like quite a career change. Before May could respond, another voice joined the conversation. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. A tall woman with warm brown skin and keen eyes extended her hand. I'm Dr. Lydia Park. I conduct the City Symphony Orchestra. May nearly choked on her water. Dr. Park was a legend in classical music circles, one of the few female conductors to lead a major orchestra, known for her innovative programming and dedication to showcasing diverse talent. It's an honor to meet you, May said, shaking her hand. I didn't realize you would be here, Dr. Park smiled. Vincent and I go way back. He mentioned he had discovered someone special and practically insisted I come tonight. She glanced over at Zhao, who was speaking with another group across the room. He has good taste, I'll give him that. Your technique is a bit rusty, but your musicality is exceptional. Thank you, May said, feeling both flattered and exposed by the professional assessment. I haven't played seriously in about 3 years. Dr. Park's eyebrows rose. 3 years? And you can still play like that? She studied May with new interest. What happened, if you don't mind my asking? Family medical emergency. I had to leave school. Understanding flickered in the conductor's eyes. I see. Well, Ms. Lin, I'd be very interested in hearing you play again once you've had some time to get back in form. She handed May a business card. We're always looking for fresh talent for our guest artist series. It's not a full-time position, but it pays well and provides excellent exposure. May stared at the card in disbelief. Thank you. That's very generous. It's not generosity, Dr. Park corrected her. It's opportunity recognition. Talent like yours shouldn't be serving drinks. She smiled again. Finish your program tonight, then call my office on Monday. We'll set up a proper audition. As Dr. Park moved away to speak with other guests, May clutched the business card, her mind racing. An audition with the City Symphony? It seemed impossible that a week ago she had been nothing but a waitress, and now... I see Lydia found you, said Zhao, appearing suddenly at her side. What did you think? You invited her here to hear me play? May asked, still processing what had just happened. I invited several people who might be interested in your talent, Zhao replied. The second half of your program begins in 5 minutes. Are you ready? May nodded, tucking Dr. Park's card carefully into her pocket. Mr. Zhao, why are you doing all this? He considered her question, his expression giving nothing away. Let's just say I recognize potential when I see it. The world has enough waitresses. It doesn't have enough pianists who can make people feel what you made them feel tonight. Before she could press him further, he gestured toward the piano. Your audience awaits, Ms. Lin. The second hour of her performance flew by even more quickly than the first. May found herself taking more risks, adding subtle variations to pieces she knew well, letting her emotions flow more freely through the music. The response was electric. She could feel the audience leaning in, fully engaged with every note. For her final piece, she returned to Chopin, not the ballade from earlier, but his nocturne in E-flat major, a piece of such delicate beauty it seemed to suspend time itself. As the last gentle notes faded into silence, May looked up to find several audience members wiping away tears. The applause that followed was thunderous. People rose to their feet, calling out praise and demanding encores. May glanced at Zhao, who gave a slight nod, and she returned to play one more short piece, a lively Schubert impromptu that sent the crowd into even greater appreciation. When she finally stood from the piano, her legs were shaky with adrenaline and emotion. The guests crowded around, offering compliments and, to her surprise, business cards. A recording studio executive, the artistic director of a prestigious summer music festival, the owner of a boutique classical music label, all expressing interest in discussing opportunities. Through it all, Zhao watched from a distance, a small, satisfied smile playing at his lips. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, May found herself in a daze. She had come here expecting to play some piano, earn a generous fee, and go home. Instead, she was holding a handful of business cards and potential job offers that could completely change her life's trajectory. "I've asked Peter to arrange a car for you whenever you're ready," Zhao said, approaching as the last guests made their way out. "Unless you'd like a nightcap first, we should discuss your next steps." "Next steps?" May repeated, gathering her sheet music with fingers that still hummed with the memory of the keyboard. Zhao led her to a seating area overlooking the city lights. "You've made quite an impression tonight. I'm guessing you've been offered several opportunities." May nodded, sitting down carefully on a sleek leather sofa. "Dr. Park wants me to audition for the City Symphony's Guest Artist Series." "Excellent. Lydia doesn't extend those invitations lightly." He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "The question is, what do you want, Ms. Lin?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, is playing occasional guest spots with the symphony enough? Or do you want more?" He handed her one of the glasses, which she accepted automatically. A real career. A chance to make up for those 3 lost years. May took a small sip of the drink, an expensive bourbon she guessed, and considered his question. The evening's success had awakened something in her that she'd tried to bury, a hunger she'd forced herself to forget. "Of course I want more," she said quietly, "but wanting isn't the same as having options. I have responsibilities. My mother is on the mend, from what I understand," Zhao interrupted, "and would likely want to see her daughter fulfill her potential rather than sacrifice her talent out of some misplaced sense of duty." May felt a flash of irritation at his presumption. "You don't know anything about what my mother would want." "Perhaps not," he conceded. "But I do know something about missed opportunities and regret. They're poison, Ms. Lin. They eat away at you over time." Something in his tone made May look at him more closely. For the first time, she saw beyond the billionaire persona to glimpse someone more complex, perhaps even vulnerable. "What opportunity did you miss?" she asked. Zhao's expression closed off immediately. "We're not discussing me." He set down his glass and reached for a folder on the coffee table between them. "I have a proposal for you." He handed her the folder. Inside was a contract several pages long with terms that made May's eyes widen. "A 2-year development deal," Zhao explained. "Fully funded return to Juilliard to complete your degree, followed by a concert tour of major cities. Recording contract with Republic Classical. All expenses covered, plus a stipend that should more than address any family financial concerns." May flipped through the pages, her heart racing. "Why would you do this? What do you get out of it?" 20% of your earnings for 5 years following the completion of your education," he said matter-of-factly. "Plus the satisfaction of having discovered you. Think of it as an investment in exceptional talent. And if I fail, if it turns out 3 years away from serious training was too much to overcome?" Zhao shrugged. "Then I lose my investment. But I don't think that will happen, do you?" May closed the folder, her thoughts swirling. It was too much to process. A complete reversal of her life's direction offered by a man she barely knew, for reasons she still didn't fully understand. "I need time to think about this," she said, "to talk to my mother, to consider all these other offers as well." "Of course." Zhao leaned back in his chair. "Take a week. But don't take too long, Ms. Lin. Opportunities like this are rare, and they don't wait forever. On the ride home, May stared out the window at the city sliding past, clutching the folder with the contract and the collection of business cards from the evening's guests. Her mind replayed every note she'd played, every compliment she'd received, every possible future that had suddenly opened before her. The driver pulled up in front of her apartment building just after midnight. Before getting out, May turned to him. "Can I ask you something? How long have you worked for Mr. Zhao?" 5 years, the driver replied. "Does he do this sort of thing often? Discover people and change their lives?" The driver seemed to consider his answer carefully. "Mr. Zhao has many interests, but I've never seen him quite as impressed by anyone as he was by you tonight." May nodded her thanks and stepped out into the cool night air. The lights were still on in their apartment, her mother waiting up despite May's texts assuring her everything was fine. As she climbed the stairs, she tried to imagine explaining all this to her mother. How could she possibly convey the way the music had flowed through her tonight? The feeling of reconnecting with a vital part of herself she'd thought was gone forever? The dizzying array of possibilities that had materialized in the space of a single evening? Mrs. Lin was sitting at the kitchen table when May opened the door, a cup of tea gone cold before her. "How was it?" she asked simply. May set down her music folder and the contract, then sank into the chair across from her mother. "Everything has changed," she said softly, and as the night deepened around them, May began to tell her story, her hands moving expressively as if still playing the piano, describing a future neither of them had dared to imagine just days before, a future where music, so long silenced, would once again be at the center of her life. 1 year later, May stood in the wings of the concert hall, her heart pounding in her chest. Through the narrow gap in the curtains, she could see the sold-out auditorium, rows upon rows of people who had come specifically to hear her play. Her debut with the City Symphony Orchestra as a featured soloist. 5 minutes, Ms. Lin, the stage manager whispered, clipboard in hand. May nodded, smoothing down the midnight blue gown she'd chosen for tonight. So much had changed in a year. Sometimes she could hardly believe the path her life had taken, since that fateful night at the Grand Plaza, when a water glass had spilled and everything had changed. She hadn't accepted Zhao's contract immediately. Instead, she'd spent a week weighing all her options, consulting with her mother, and even seeking legal advice from a family friend who practiced entertainment law. "His terms are surprisingly fair," the lawyer had told her. "But I'd push back on the 20%. 15 is more standard." In the end, she'd proposed a counteroffer. She would accept Zhao's support for completing her education and launching her career, but at 15% of her earnings for 4 years, not 5. To her surprise, he'd agreed without argument. "I'm investing in your talent, Ms. Lin, not trying to own it," he'd said when they met to sign the revised contract. "I expect this to be profitable for us both." The past year had been the most challenging and rewarding of her life. Returning to Juilliard as a special student, working with professors who remembered her promise from before, practicing 6 to 8 hours daily to regain her technique and surpass her previous level. It had been exhausting and exhilarating. Her mother's health had continued to improve, especially after they moved to a better apartment closer to Juilliard. The experimental treatment they could now afford had yielded promising results, and Mrs. Lin had even started teaching Chinese language classes part-time at a community center. Tonight was the culmination of their shared journey, May's first major performance since restarting her career. She was playing Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1 with the orchestra, under Dr. Park's direction. "You've come a long way from serving drinks," came a familiar voice behind her. May turned to find Vincent Zhao, impeccable as always in a tailored suit. Over the past year, their strictly business relationship had gradually evolved into something resembling friendship. She'd come to see beyond his intimidating exterior to the complex person beneath. Driven, certainly, and sometimes harsh, but also unexpectedly thoughtful and genuinely passionate about music. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "But in a good way," he nodded in understanding. "Fear is appropriate before something important. It's your brain's way of making sure you pay attention." "I'm not sure that helps," May said with a small laugh. "It wasn't meant to help. It was meant to be true." His expression softened slightly. "You're ready for this. More than ready." From the stage came the sound of the orchestra tuning up, that beautiful cacophony that always preceded order. I should go find my seat, Zhao said. I've brought some people I'd like you to meet afterward. A director from the Berlin Philharmonic and the dean of the Paris Conservatory. Of course he had. Zhao was always thinking 3 moves ahead, always creating new opportunities. May had learned not to be surprised. Thank you for coming, she said sincerely. It means a lot. He gave her a small nod, then hesitated. There's something I've never told you about why I stopped you that night at the restaurant. May looked at him curiously. This seemed an odd moment for revelations. My mother was a pianist, he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Quite talented, but she gave it up when she married my father, who didn't approve of her performing publicly. By the time I was old enough to understand what she had sacrificed, she had developed arthritis in her hands. He looked down at his own hands. I grew up watching her listen to recordings of great pianists with such longing. She died never knowing what she might have become. May was speechless. In all their conversations over the past year, Zhao had rarely mentioned his family. When I saw you at that restaurant, he continued, something in your hands reminded me of her. The way you held the serving tray, too graceful, too precise for someone who had only ever been a waitress. I knew you were carrying music inside you locked away. I couldn't stand to see it wasted. I had no idea, May said softly. Yes, well. He straightened, his usual composure returning. It's not something I discuss, but I thought tonight you should know. He glanced toward the stage. 2 minutes, I believe. Break a leg, Ms. Lin. As he walked away, May felt a new understanding of the man who had so abruptly changed her life. His investment in her wasn't just business. It was personal. Perhaps even a way of honoring his mother's unfulfilled dreams. Places. Ms. Lin, the stage manager called. May took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The bright lights momentarily blinded her, but she could feel the audience's anticipation like a physical presence. She made her way to the grand piano at center stage, adjusted the bench, and looked up to meet Dr. Park's encouraging gaze on the conductor's podium. In the front row, she could just make out her mother's face, beaming with pride. Next to her sat Mrs. Wu from the music school, who had let May practice for free in those first crucial days. And there was Ricky, the bartender from the Grand Plaza, who had insisted on buying a ticket even after May offered to put him on the guest list. Further back, she spotted Zhao, his expression intent. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod. May placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her fingers. She thought of all the twists and turns that had led her to this moment. The scholarship to Juilliard, her mother's illness, the years serving drinks, the spilled water, Zhao's challenge, and the long road back to where she was meant to be. As the orchestra began the famous opening chords of the Tchaikovsky concerto, May felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where she belonged. This was what she was born to do. Her entrance came, and her fingers flew across the keys with confidence and passion. The hours of practice, the years of training, the lifetime of loving music, it all poured through her into the performance. She wasn't just playing the notes. She was telling her story through them. The struggle, the loss, the rediscovery, the joy. The first movement ended with thunderous applause. As the second movement began, with its more introspective, lyrical theme, May found herself thinking about paths not taken and second chances. How rare it was to be able to reclaim a dream once abandoned. By the time she reached the fiery final movement, she was playing with a freedom and abandon that transcended technique. The connection between her, the orchestra, and the audience was palpable. That magical circuit that only exists in live performance, where music becomes more than sound, where